The arena smelled like varnished wood and old sweat, the kind of smell that doesn't leave when the lights go out. It sat inside a civic hall that had seen speeches, dances, arguments, and now, this. Rows of folding chairs. A low stage. Banners hung crooked above a ring that looked temporary but felt absolute. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent. Inside, time narrowed. Every sound had edges. The slap of tape around knuckles. The squeak of shoes on the floorboards. The occasional cough from someone trying not to be noticed. A bell tested its own voice once, then went quiet. The crowd was not huge, but it was dense with certainty. Men who had trained in one system their whole lives sat with arms crossed, judging. Students leaned forward, hungry. A few reporters held notebooks like shields, hoping to catch a moment they could name. It wasn't a glamorous tournament. No cameras on cranes. No booming announcer turning names into thunder. But the room carried a different kind of authority. This was where reputations got built the hard way. Not by marketing. By witnesses who didn't clap unless something true had happened. And in the middle of it all, behind the ropes, there was a stillness that didn't match the noise. Bruce Lee waited near a corner post. Not pacing, not stretching for attention. His body looked relaxed the way a cat looks relaxed. Not because it is lazy, but because it is ready without effort. His eyes were open in a calm way that made people speak softer when they walked near him. He wasn't dressed like a champion. No cape. No entourage. No theatrics to sell the idea of danger. Just a simple top, dark pants, and hands that looked ordinary until you remembered what they had learned. The ring lights flattened everything. They made sweat shine and faces look pale. They made men look more confident than they felt. Bruce looked the same under that light as he did outside it. That was what made him unsettling. He didn't stare at the audience. He didn't ignore them either. He simply existed as if the ring was not a stage, but a place where truth could be tested without applause. An official approached, clipboard in hand, trying to wear neutrality like a uniform. He spoke to Bruce with polite formality, but his eyes kept flicking back as if checking whether the stories were accurate. Bruce answered with short nods. He wasn't withholding. He was conserving. Across the ring, on the opposite side, the world champion entered. He was 6'5", and he carried that height like a verdict. Broad shoulders, long arms, a chest that seemed to push the air away. His walk had the heavy calm of a man who had never been forced to question whether size mattered. He wasn't loud, but the people around him were. A few men slapped his back. Someone said his name like it was already carved into history. He nodded, smiling faintly, comfortable inside his reputation. The champion's corner worked with practiced precision, wrapping hands, adjusting tape, murmuring reminders. They didn't speak like men preparing for danger. They spoke like men maintaining an order. He had spent years winning under bright lights and stricter rules. He had mastered a particular form, polished it until it looked like law. Every movement he made seemed to say the same thing. There's a right way, and I am it. He had built his identity on structure, on timing measured by coaches, on footwork repeated until it became instinct, on opponents who were large, proud, and predictable. Bruce was none of those things. When the champion saw him, his expression barely changed, but the corner of his mouth lifted in a small, confident curve. It wasn't a grin. It was a measurement. He looked Bruce up and down, not cruelly, but with the casual certainty of a man who believed the world could be understood at a glance. He leaned toward the official, said something that made the official hesitate, then chuckle nervously. The champion's eyes returned to Bruce. "You're too small," he said. Not shouted, not spat, delivered like advice from the future. A few people laughed, quick and loyal. Others didn't. Not because they were offended, because they felt the room tighten around that sentence. Small. It was the oldest insult disguised as common sense. It wasn't directed only at Bruce. It was directed at any person who had ever walked into a room and been reduced to a number. Height, weight, status, background. It was directed at that part of the audience that wanted the world to stay readable. Because if size decides, then life is simple. You can rank people at the door. You can relax. You can stop watching. And if size decides, then you never have to ask the harder question. What if you've been calling your comfort truth just because it has never been challenged? That's why a single sentence can tighten a room. It isn't the insult. It's the permission it gives everyone else to keep living inside the same easy math. Bruce heard it without blinking. He didn't smile back. He didn't harden. He didn't perform humility. He simply nodded once, as if acknowledging weather. That nod bothered the champion. Not because it challenged him, because it refused to react. A tall man can handle defiance. What unsettles him is irrelevance. The official stepped between them and reviewed the rules, voice a little too loud, trying to turn tension into procedure. Points. Safety. Control. No cheap shots. The champion listened with polite boredom. Bruce listened like the rules were just another kind of distance to understand. Because that was the real difference. The champion believed rules made reality stable. Bruce believed reality moved faster than rules. To the champion, combat was the perfection of a system. To Bruce, combat was the moment the system failed. They touched gloves. The champion's glove tapped like a signature. Bruce's glove tapped like a comma. The bell rang. Not a dramatic gong, just a clean note that cut through the room. The champion lifted his hands into a flawless guard, feet planted like anchors. His stance looked beautiful, the kind of stance that makes students feel safe. He held the center like it belonged to him. Bruce did not mirror that stance. He stood looser, lighter, not careless, unattached. The champion took a step forward, and the ropes behind Bruce suddenly seemed closer, as if the taller man's shadow had weight. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. In his mind, time was his ally. He could use reach like a fence, patience like a trap. Bruce moved a half step, not backward, but angled, turning the champion's straight line into a question. The champion's eyes narrowed. He feinted, a clean gesture meant to draw a reaction. Bruce did not react. He adjusted. The audience began to notice something that felt wrong. The champion was doing everything correctly, and yet the space between them did not behave. It did not settle into the familiar rhythm of a match. It stayed alive. A young fighter in the front row stopped whispering and leaned in, elbows on knees. He had come to watch a champion dominate a smaller man. Now he was watching a smaller man refuse to become a lesson. The champion spoke again, low enough that only the front rows heard. He said something about discipline, about real champions, about what happens when someone tries to cut corners. It was philosophy disguised as superiority, a belief that tradition equals truth. Bruce answered without raising his voice. He said that discipline is not memorizing form. It is staying free when form collapses. That line didn't impress the crowd. It unsettled them, because it pointed at a fear most people carry. What if what I've learned is only useful when life stays polite? The champion stepped in again, deciding the talking had gone far enough. His lead hand flicked out with speed, a probing strike that would have touched most men's face. Bruce's head was not there. Not with a dramatic slip. With a simple absence. The champion's knuckles cut air. He reset immediately, still smiling, but now the smile had effort. He threw again. A sharper line. Bruce was still not there. The audience stopped laughing. Not because they saw violence. Because they saw certainty missing its target. The champion's shoulders tightened slightly. He added force, as if strength could correct miscalculation. Bruce stayed close enough to be dangerous, far enough to be untouchable. This was the real conflict. Not man against man. Belief against belief. The champion's belief was that control comes from structure. Bruce's belief was that control comes from adaptability. The champion circled to cut off angles. Bruce circled in a way that made the champion's circling feel slow. Not slow in speed. Slow in commitment. Because every step the champion took declared where he would be next. Bruce's steps did not declare. They arrived. The official watched carefully now, no longer relaxed. He had seen men get hurt when pride tried to rescue itself. The champion finally decided to close the distance fully, to impose his size, to make the fight physical instead of conceptual. He stepped in hard. And in that instant, the room held its breath. Bruce did not retreat. He entered. It happened in 5 seconds. Not 5 seconds of trading. 5 seconds of decision. Bruce's lead hand snapped out. A short strike to the champion's chest, not to injure, to interrupt. Before the champion's mind could translate it, Bruce's other hand touched the champion's forearm, guiding it past center as if moving a curtain. The champion tried to grab. Bruce was already angled. A second strike landed, light but exact, under the ribs where breath lives. The champion's inhale broke. His posture changed, just enough. That was all Bruce needed. A final touch, a quick stop to the line of the jaw, not a full punch, a message. The champion's head turned, not violently, but inevitably, and the champion stepped back. One step. Then another. Not because he was hurt, because he was solved. The official called it. Not loudly, just firmly. Stop. The crowd didn't cheer right away. They couldn't. Their minds were still trying to fit what they saw into the old categories. Big should dominate. Small should survive. But what happened wasn't domination. It was economy. The champion stood upright, blinking, breath uneven for the first time in the match. His eyes stayed on Bruce, searching for the trick. There was no trick. Bruce lowered his hands. No victory pose. No smirk. No invitation for applause. He looked like a man who had corrected a misunderstanding and moved on. The champion swallowed and tried to speak, but the words didn't come out as planned. Pride wanted one sentence. Reality offered another. He finally said it quietly. What was that? It wasn't anger. It was disbelief turning into curiosity. Bruce stepped closer, not invading, just closing the distance in conversation. He said that people confuse size with power because size is visible. He said what matters is not how much space you occupy, but how quickly you can change inside that space. The champion listened, jaw tight, not in defiance, in processing. Bruce continued, careful not to preach. He said that if you rely on one perfect form, you become a prisoner of it. He said the moment the situation shifts, your perfect form becomes a delay. The champion's eyes dropped for a moment, as if watching his own feet from inside his memory. He had felt that delay, that fraction of a second where his trained response arrived to a place that no longer existed. That was the 5 seconds, not the strikes, the discovery. Around them, the audience began to murmur, not with gossip, but with a new kind of attention. Students were no longer loyal to their styles. They were loyal to the question, how did he do that? And deeper, why did it feel inevitable? Because it wasn't about speed alone. Speed is easy to worship. It was about freedom. Freedom from needing the world to fit a plan. The champion had been trained to perfect what he already knew. Bruce had trained to abandon what he knew the moment it stopped working. That is a terrifying skill, not just in a ring, in life. Because most people don't lose because they are weak. They lose because they are committed. Committed to being right. Committed to being the strong one. Committed to the identity they built when it was safe. The champion's "you're too small" had been more than an insult. It was the voice of every outdated certainty. The belief that value can be measured by appearance. The belief that power is always obvious. Bruce hadn't argued with it. He had let it step forward. Then he had removed its footing. The official approached, speaking softly, asking if both men were okay. The champion nodded. Bruce nodded. 2 nods, but different meanings. The champion's nod meant, I understand I was mistaken. Bruce's nod meant, I understand this is how it goes. The champion extended his hand. This time there was no extra squeeze. Just a straightforward grip, honest, unadorned. Bruce took it. For a moment, the ring held a quiet that felt larger than the tournament. The crowd finally applauded, but it wasn't a roar. It was a recognition, not of a winner, of a principle. People left the arena carrying that principle like a small weight in the mind. Maybe the thing you fear isn't the stronger opponent. Maybe it's the opponent who refuses to fight the way you prepared. Maybe the real advantage is not size. It's the ability to be without shape until the moment demands one. Outside, the city kept moving. Traffic, sunlight, strangers. But inside those who watched, something had loosened. A belief they didn't know they were holding. That the world is fair because it is predictable. Somewhere in the back row, a man who had come to feel secure in his own size, his own title, his own method, felt something quietly dissolve. Not inspiration. Exposure. He realized the insult he throws at others is usually the one he fears hearing himself. Too small. Too late. Not enough. And in that realization, the ring became a mirror, not a contest anymore. Bruce didn't stay to enjoy the applause. He stepped through the ropes, picked up his bag, and walked away with the same calm he had brought. The champion remained in the ring for a moment longer, staring at the mat, not defeated, but reorganized. He had come with a sentence. He left with a question. And that is the quiet beginning of wisdom. Because in the end, the ring didn't reward the larger man. It rewarded the one who could change faster than certainty.